Hello, my name is Christina Rains, and this presentation is on the Mycenaean culture and specifically focusing on religion and literature and how they are integrated together. Mycenaean Greece dates before 1200 BC. Mycenaean Greece was the beginning of the Greek culture as we know it today. Ancient Greece occupied the mainland of Greece, the Aegean Islands, and the shores of Asia Minor. The Bronze Age in ancient Greece established a syllabic script, a centralized political system, and a popular religious system, and also classic literature pieces. The Mycenaean religion was very important during this time period. The religion that we will be focusing on is during the period before 1200 BC all the way to 800 BC. The Mycenaean civilization's religious practices can be identified as the hero cult. Dr. Provence specifies that the hero cult was made up of classic Greek gods and goddesses as well as many demigods. Examples of these include Zeus and Hermes, Ares, and Artemis. The hero cult is woven into the culture and the civilization and can be seen in the literature and the artwork and even the architecture that is present. This can be seen in the Iliad for some of the literature examples, as well as in many of the artwork pieces, and the architecture also is very centralized and focused on the hero cult. During the heroic age, which was around 1200 through 750 BC, the same religious practices were applied and practiced daily as during the Mycenaean civilization. That is why I have placed the dates between 1200 BC through 700 BC. We can find a lot of history and records of the religious practices when looking at the gods and demigods found in the heroic age as well as the Mycenaean civilization. The religious impact that the hero cult had on the Mycenaean culture and other Greek cultures that followed it was that the hero cult greatly impacted Greeks' culture and can be seen in every aspect of the civilization, from the literature to the art and even in the architecture. One notable aspect of the hero culture was that the hero cult was carried throughout the Mycenaean period and into the classical Greek period with very little change. There are some changes but not that many. One of the most prominent ways that the hero cult impacted the Mycenaean civilization was in the literature that was written during that time. We find many pieces of literature like the Iliad and other myths that concern the hero cult, and they are very consistent in the literature that we find in Greek culture. The Mycenaean culture does not have its own literature. However, we do know that the Mycenaean civilization did write in Linear B. We have found a couple of their documents, as well as Linear A. However, these are strictly syllabic script, so we don't find that. However, we do find a lot of the hero cult impacting literature as we go through and look back on how texts specifically portray the Mycenaean civilization. Although there were no surviving pieces of literature that directly deal with the hero cult during the Mycenaean period, the hero cult appears within the Iliad, which reflects the Mycenaean time period, and this is noted by Dr. Provence. Now moving into the literature aspect of the Mycenaean culture, we find that the Mycenaean culture, again, was dating before 1200 BC, and we see that during the Mycenaean civilization, no major texts have been discovered. However, we do have discovered Linear A and Linear B. Linear A, however, has not been deciphered, and we still wait for that to be deciphered, and hopefully that will be soon. The most important Mycenaean text that has been deciphered is the Linear B text, and the Linear B text is a syllabic script. However, it does not have any direct relationship with the religion, the hero cult, during this time period. The Iliad does include a brief account of the Mycenaean culture, and this is what we'll mainly be focusing on, because although the Iliad was not written in this time period, it does look back and has the clearest picture of what the Mycenaean culture looked like and how they practiced religion and things along that kind of line. A reader can study this to obtain a deeper understanding of how the Mycenaean religion and literature interconnect. The Iliad was written around 850 BC and is one of the most prominent texts when it comes to studying the Mycenaean culture and civilization. In the Mycenaean text, we do see a lot of the hero cult and the religious practices that are associated with it. The Iliad, in line 6 of the Iliad, the reader becomes aware of the time period by the naming of the Argians, who are known as the Mycenaeans in later times. And we note that it is also, the Iliad is set in the Trojan War, and this is dated from about 1260 through 1180 BC, and this would be right when the Mycenaean civilization was prospering and having conflicts. So this is very close to the Mycenaean time period. So obviously Homer, or who wrote the text, is looking back and reminiscing on what he knows about the Mycenaean time period. Since the Iliad was taking place during the Trojan War and the Mycenaeans were participating in the war, the Mycenaean culture can be seen and studied throughout the Iliad. And this is an important point because the Iliad is quite a long literary work, and we find that throughout it, over and over, we find there are different cultural aspects and religion and how those integrated into what is now the classical work of the Iliad. The Iliad was written by Homer around 550 BC, and it is noted, in particular, for describing the Trojan War. I would like to read a very short excerpt from the Iliad beginning in Book 18, and in Part 2, lines 1 through 15. And so it says, "So the men fought like a mass of whirling fire, as swift as Antiloch's race. The message of toward Achilles, sheltered under his curving, beaked ships he found him, foreboding, but deep down all that had come to pass. Agonizing now, he probed his own great heart. Why, oh why, are long-haired Argians routed again, driven in terror off the plain to a crowd of the ships? But why? Dear gods, don't bring to pass the grief that haunts my heart, the prophecy that my mother revealed to me one time. She said the best of the Myrmidons, while I lived, would fall at the Trojan hands and leave the light of the day. And now he's dead. I know it. Medeos' gallant son, my headstrong friend. I told Patroclus clearly, once you have beaten off the lethal fire, quick, come back to the ship. You must not battle Hector." And that is the end of the excerpt there. As we hear this, we're finding many key aspects of what the Mycenaean culture is going to be like. We find that they're at war, and that Achilles' friend does in fact die. And when we read the Iliad, we get this sense of what they believed in and what was important to them. And we do find that they value gods and deities and demigods as being important and kind of directing what happens in their life. The Iliad and the Mycenaean Greece portrays what the culture looked like during the time period. The Iliad portrays Mycenaean culture as being focused on gods and demigods. This relates directly to the religion during that time period. Achilles is a demigod, we find out. He's the main character of the Iliad, and he's the son of Zeus and the son of Thetis. Now, Zeus is a god, and therefore his mother is a mortal. This makes him a demigod. Zeus is described as God in Book 18, line 98 through 99, and I'll read a short excerpt of that, and it begins like this. But now I will go and meet the murderer head on, that Hector who destroyed the dearest life I know. For my own death, I'll meet it freely, whatever Zeus and the other deathless gods would bring on it. And here we find that gods don't die, that gods are immortal, and that they have power over sentencing man either life or death. And here is where the hero cult comes into play, because now Achilles is going to be rising up knowing that the gods are determining his future. He's going to rise up and do what he thinks is best. And even if that costs him a quick death by Zeus. And we find this throughout the Iliad. With this classic piece of writing, we see that struggle between the gods and the mortals. And here we definitely see the exaltation towards the demigods and the gods, and how they have so much power. We also see in the Iliad portrays the culture as fighting the Trojan War, and also gives vivid description of metalworking and weapons during this time period. This is important because we also see that Achilles, as the demigod, is using mortal man's tools, and so that's why in the hero cult they are so magnified and glorified, is because even though they are partly mortal, they overcome and use what they have to kind of make their way and make their stain on life. So I'm going to excerpt from Book 19. It's going to be from lines 127 through 142, so it's kind of a longer passage. And we're going to begin right now, and that starts like this. First he wrapped his legs with metal-made greaves, fastened behind his heels with silver ankle clasps. Next he strapped on a breastplate round his chest, then over his shoulders Achilles swung his sword, the fine bronze blade with the silver stud hilt, then hoisted the massive shield flashing far and wide, like a full-roon moon, and gleaming bright as the light that reaches sailors out to the sea, the flares of the watchfire burning strong in a lovely sheepfold up the mountain slope, when the gale winds hurled the crew that fights against them, far over the fishing swarming sea, far above the loved ones. So the gleam of Achilles' wet wrought blazoned shield shot up and hit the skies. Then lifting his runged helmet he set it down on his brow, and the horsehair crest shone like a star, and the waving golden pumps shone as Hephaestus drove the bristling thick long into its ridge. So here we see a very detailed description of what the shields look like, what the breastplate looks like in the Iliad and during the Mycenaean time period. This also helps the reader to understand what the Mycenaean culture kind of valued as what was important as weaponry and what was deserving of a demigod. So we do see the hero cult carried over even into how Homer wrote exactly what Achilles is putting on and what he's going to do. So this is very important to note as we look at religion and how it relates to the literature during this time period.